Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery dialogues and sober stories.
Welcome back to Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories. I'm your host, Antonio Matta, and whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been walking this road with us for a while now, I want to thank you for being here. This show is a space where healing meets honesty and where we explore what it really means to live a life of transformation. Today's episode is a little different. No guests, no interviews, just us. We're diving into two powerful questions that came directly from this community, questions that touch the very heart of our human wiring. First, why do we withdraw when we're hurting? And second, is there an evolutionary explanation for why we deflect our inner struggles onto others, why we project? Now, on the surface, these might sound like psychological quirks, but when we zoom out and look through the lens of evolution, what emerges is something far deeper and strangely beautiful. These are just symptoms of distress. They're ancient strategies. Survival blueprints were written into our biology long before we had language to name what we were feeling. And while they may not always serve us in our modern world, understanding their origins helps us reclaim power over our responses and replace shame with self-compassion. So in this solo episode, we're exploring how our most confusing behaviors, retreat, blame, shutdown, may not be signs of weakness after all. There may be evidence that your mind and body are doing exactly what they were designed to do, protect you. But what happens when that protective wiring starts to misfire? That's what we're unpacking today. So get comfortable, take a breath, and let's begin with the first question.
Antonio, when we're hurting, whether emotionally, physically, or even socially, why do so many of us instinctively withdraw? Is there an evolutionary reason behind that reaction, or is it more cultural conditioning?
You know, one of the most common and misunderstood reactions we have when we're hurting is to pull away. Whether that hurt is emotional, physical, or social, many of us instinctively withdraw. We stop returning texts. We lose interest. We close the blinds and dim our inner light. Is there an evolutionary reason why we do this, or is it just cultural conditioning? Well, the answer, it turns out, is steeped in ancient survival strategies. Withdrawal isn't weakness, it's wiring. Our tendency to retreat when overwhelmed is not just a symptom of modern stress, it's a deeply embedded survival mechanism shaped by millennia of evolution. Let's break this down. From an evolutionary perspective, withdrawal served multiple life-saving purposes. When our ancestors faced social defeat, predator threats, or resource scarcity, the smartest move wasn't always to fight or flee. It was to freeze, to shut down, to conserve. One of the leading theories, the behavioral schema model, suggests that when the risks of acting outweigh the potential rewards, when fighting back might just make things worse, our bodies initiate a kind of biological pause. Fatigue, social retreat, even anhedonia, that dulling of pleasure. All of these are not signs that something's broken. They're protective. They keep us from wasting precious energy or entering dangerous situations. Think of it as an internal emergency protocol. If we can't escape the fire, we bunker down and wait for it to burn out. Another theory, called the analytical rumination hypothesis, proposes something a bit more cognitive. That depression, or the withdrawal that often accompanies it, gives our brain uninterrupted time to solve deeply complex problems. It forces us inward, reducing distractions, so we can process what went wrong and how we might adapt. It's not just a breakdown, it's a forced reboot. Across the primate world, we see this same adaptive behavior. Chimpanzees withdraw during social transitions. Rhesus monkeys retreat to avoid aggression. Even marmosets back away from conflict over food to prevent a bigger fight. Why? Because in group living species like ours, survival often depends on knowing when not to engage. In our ancestral environments, where social harmony was key and conflict could mean death, a well-timed withdrawal could de-escalate a fight, signal submission, or allow for regrouping after a loss. It helped preserve status, avoid ostracism, and keep the individual alive long enough to try again. Here's where it gets tricky and painful. What used to be an adaptive short-term solution in hunter-gatherer tribes becomes a long-term trap in the modern world. Our stressors now aren't lions or food scarcity, they're emails, rent, burnout, social media perfectionism, and chronic loneliness. But our brains still respond as if we're in a savanna. Withdrawal kicks in. We isolate, we shut down. But unlike in tribal societies, where temporary withdrawal would have been followed by reintegration into a supportive community, our modern lives often lack those built-in buffers. We don't return to the village circle. We scroll further. We feel worse. And what was once a survival instinct becomes a breeding ground for depression, addiction, and shame. This is what researchers call an evolutionary mismatch. Our ancient wiring misfiring in a world it wasn't designed for. First, we recognize that withdrawal is part of being human. It's not just dysfunction, it's design. Understanding that helps remove the shame. If you find yourself retreating, it might be your body and mind trying to protect you the only way they know how. But second, and maybe most importantly, we remember is that the same instinct that protected us can now keep us stuck. And that's where recovery, therapy, and community come in. In the context of healing, we can begin to retrain our systems, to tell ourselves, I'm not actually in danger right now. I don't need to disappear. We can gently bring ourselves back into safe connection, from here into the village. So the next time you feel that pull to withdraw, don't judge it. Get curious. Ask yourself, what is my nervous system trying to protect me from? And then ask the next question, what might it need to feel safe coming back? That's how we start rewriting the old code, one smallest self-compassionate step at a time. So if withdrawal is one way our nervous system tries to keep us safe by pulling us away from perceived threats, then projection is like its psychological cousin, where withdrawal says, I can't handle being out there. Projection says, I can handle what's in here. Both are rooted in protection. Both are part of a deeper evolutionary story about how we survive emotional threat. But while withdrawal creates distance, projection creates distortion. It takes what we find unbearable in ourselves, anger, fear, shame, and casts it outward, often onto the people closest to us. So the next question we're sitting with today is this: why do we do that? Is projection just deflection, or is it something deeper, something built into the wiring of our emotional survival? Let's explore.
Can you talk about why some people seem wired to use projection as a defense mechanism? Like, is there an evolutionary reason we deflect what we can't handle inwardly by projecting it onto others?
Have you ever caught yourself accusing someone else of being judgmental only to later realize that maybe it was you doing the judging all along? Is there an evolutionary explanation for why we deflect what we can't handle inwardly by pushing it outward? And the short answer is yes. But like most things in recovery and psychology, it's beautifully complicated. Psychological projection is one of the mind's oldest defense plays. It's what happens when we unconsciously take feelings, urges, or traits we can't accept in ourselves and pin them on someone else. Instead of, I'm angry, it becomes, they're mad at me. Instead of, I feel inadequate, we might think, she's so condescending. And here's the twist. It's unconscious. We don't even know we're doing it. Projection is like a psychological pressure valve. It's there to relieve internal tension. If the truth inside feels too painful or unacceptable, our ego flips the script and casts it out. And in doing so, we avoid the shame, anxiety, or fear that might otherwise flood us. Now, are we evolutionarily wired to do this? Not in the sense that there's a projection gene, but the psychological capacity to project may have once served us well in ancestral environments. According to evolutionary psychologists, projection could have been a form of cognitive triage. When survival was at stake, externalizing danger, real or imagined, could have helped us act quickly. If internal fear gets misread as an external threat, your body still kicks into fight or flight. You're mobilized, on guard, ready. So if you're living in a high-stakes, high-threat tribal setting, assuming someone else is hostile, even if it's really your own aggression you're feeling, might have given you the edge to survive a confrontation or protect your kin. It's inaccurate, yes, but it's adaptive when accuracy takes a back seat to immediate action. Beyond self-protection, projection helped bind groups together by casting negative traits, selfishness, cowardice, deceit, onto them. The rival tribe, our ancestors preserved the illusion of moral superiority within. That us versus them dynamic solidified identity and built cohesion. So on a survival level, projection not only helped individuals cope, it helped groups unite. Sound familiar? We still see this dynamic today. In politics, in family systems, in workplaces. Projection can rally a team around a common villain, but it can also fracture a relationship or alienate us from ourselves. From a clinical perspective, projection is considered a primitive defense. Freud and his daughter Anna described it as a way the ego avoids confronting painful impulses. It's common in early psychological development and in conditions marked by emotional instability like narcissistic or borderline personality structures. In these cases, projection isn't just a one-off defense, it's a full-on way of relating to the world. A person who secretly feels deeply insecure might accuse others of being critical or fake, not because they're delusional, but because owning that insecurity feels unbearable. And here's something powerful. The more emotionally reactive or dysregulated we are, the more likely we are to use projection. Studies show that traits like high neuroticism, low agreeableness, and poor emotional intelligence are all correlated with a greater reliance on this defense. First, we stop shaming ourselves for being human. If you've caught yourself projecting, you're not broken. You're wired for self-preservation. The mind will do whatever it can to avoid pain, especially if it doesn't think you're ready to face it. But here's the gift of recovery. We are ready, or we're learning to be. What once served us as a protective mechanism can now hold us back, distorting our reality, harming relationships, and blocking growth. That's where practices like therapy, shadow work, journaling, and especially emotional intelligence training come in. The more we raise our self-awareness, the less we need to project. We can say, thoughtful, I feel hurt, instead of they're being rude. We can own our shadow instead of casting it. So no, we're not doomed to deflect forever, but we do need to understand where projection comes from and why it shows up. It's an echo of our past, a trace of a once useful tool now misfiring in a modern world that requires nuance, self-reflection, and compassion. And the invitation? To reclaim what we've disowned, to meet our discomfort not as a threat, but as a teacher, and to slowly, courageously bring what's unconscious into the light. Because healing isn't about being perfect, it's about learning to hold our truth without needing to throw it at someone else. If there's a thread running through both of today's questions, it's this. What we often see as dysfunction is sometimes just survival in disguise. Withdrawal, projection, these aren't signs that you're broken. They're echoes of strategies that once kept us safe. And while they may no longer serve us the way they used to, understanding their roots gives us something invaluable. Choice. The choice to respond differently, to stay present, to heal forward. And that, at its core, is what recovery is about. Not perfection, not erasing the past, but learning how to live with deeper awareness and maybe a little more grace for ourselves and each other. If you've got a question you'd like me to explore in a future episode, or you just want to share what's coming up for you, I'd love to hear from you. Email, DM, or leave a voice note. Your voice belongs here. Always has. If Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories has been meaningful to you and you'd like to help keep these conversations going, if that's you or your organization, reach out directly. Want to rep your recovery journey? Check out the mantra merch at recoverydialogues.com. Each item helps spread hope and supports the mission. Every message, share, or contribution helps more than you know. Thanks for showing up today, for sitting with these questions, for being curious about your own evolution. Wherever you are on your path, just know you're not walking it alone. This is a dialogue, and your story, it matters. Until next time, take what speaks to you, leave the rest, and keep listening inward. You're doing the work, and that's enough for today.
Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery dialogues and sober stories.